Okay, so this is just a quick overview video just to run through a practical example of using the actual property planning content. What we're going to look to do is build up a consolidated investment fund. If you're not from the property sector, then it's probably still worth watching this because it does illustrate pretty much everything that Modano is about. So how easy it is to get a model up and running, how dynamic they are to work with, how clearly structured and laid out they are, and just all the efficiency that comes with using a Modano-based best practice model. Okay, so we're going to model Australian Unity's office fund. Just to be clear, these guys aren't a client of ours, although they probably will be when they've seen this. The information I'm going to use is all publicly available, basically just robbed it off the website. And in terms of that asymmetry of information, we obviously don't have detailed tenancies and things like that. So the model will be very skinny from a data perspective. The key takeaway is that structurally it matches the overall structure of the Australian Unity office fund business. So process of use, we'll just click New Workbook on the Modano tab and we'll select the property planning model. So this is just a starting shell that we'll then use to build out the rest of the content. Now we'll just quickly set up the time. I'll make the model 61 periods, so that'll include a stub June month that allows me to get my historical kind of starting values in. And we'll also set the model up to be in thousands. Okay, so first thing we're going to get Modano to do is to build out the first investment property. So all we have to do is really click Insert from Web, select the investment property, and in this instance we'll use the amounts and rental calculations module. And obviously when I click insert, this will all get built into my starting model. Now, as I say, I don't really have any detailed information, so I'm just going to strip this asset back to a single line throughout. Obviously, if you're modeling up your own property fund, then you'll have far more information. You'll scale things like tenancies up to reflect the structure of the underlying asset. Now, in terms of obviously covering off on the basics, blue assumption cells, we'll just enter an asset name. And we'll just throw in some broad total tenancy assumptions as well as a historical book value. Definitely worth noting that we're only really scratching the surface from an assumptions perspective here. So in addition to only having a total tenancy where we would have a detailed schedule, we're also largely ignoring the historicals. So for most fund models that we'd be putting together, we would have all of the historical data going back to the start of the fund so that we can work out things like historical performance, show things like trends, work out performance fees and investor returns and so on. So definitely don't take the category-based and information scale as a limitation of the software. It's really just the fact that I'm just using publicly available information. So in terms of the actual fund, there are 9 assets in there at the moment. We'll get Modano just to build out the next 8. So that's as simple as just clicking on the mirror module button, entering 8, and Modano will do the rest for us. Now, in terms of modeling this business, it's actually going to take us more time to populate the model than actually build it out. Now, just using the magic of television, I will quickly populate the other 8 assets. Magic. Now, if we go and have a quick look at the financial statements, we'll see that in addition to obviously the 9 assets all being built out with their own dedicated schedules, the financials have scooped each of these in on a row-by-row basis. So, important thing just to note, the detailed tenancy level information in the underlying assets isn't pulled through and presented on the face of the financials because the financials are really about that kind of consolidated lens. So when I'm looking at my financial statements, I'm trying to see the bigger picture, and that's why we only bring through the totals from each of the underlying assets. Now, in terms of the funding structure, the office fund has 3 tranches of debt. So I will just build that out by clicking Insert from Web. We'll choose the senior debt genre and we'll probably just throw in the bullet portfolio debt. Now, this has been built out with 3 categories, which actually matches the current funding structure of the office fund. Now, obviously, if there was a 4th, for example, all we have to do is right-click and it will insert an additional debt tranche for us. So again, that whole debt piece is very automated and efficient to get up and running in the first instance. And we'll just chuck in some random closing balances and interest rates. And if we hop across to the financials, we'll see that they've also been scaled up accordingly. So hopefully people can see how quickly and efficiently Modano can scale these types of models up. Important thing just to note, it isn't just about inserting content. So for example, our starting model has corporate tax and GST modules contained within it. Now in the case of the office trust, those 2 don't really apply. So if I go up to Modano and click delete module, I can select those 2 modules and delete them from the workbook. And this is again really where Modano comes into its own. This is true plug and play activity. So when those modules are removed, I don't get left with a whole stack of hash refs. The modules are removed very cleanly and I'm left with placeholders within, say, my financial statements should I require those line items. Now, in terms of the property planning content, it's designed more for corporates, so we're assuming that people are going to be inserting ordinary equity and have dividends payment mechanisms and what have you. In the instance of a trust or a fund or some sort of see-through vehicle, what we will probably insert is just our unit holders module. So all this has is an assumption area for number of unit holders, and assumes that profit attributable to these unit holders is just whipped out nice and cleanly. There's also all the usual kind of unit holder metrics around yield and what have you. And obviously, once we've got that kind of core engine up and running, we really want to kind of see the wood for the trees. So we'll throw in a stack of dashboards. So again, a module is a dashboard. We'll just choose something like the panel board. And as soon as we click insert from web, that will not only obviously get built out, it's print ready, it'll hook into all the information, and there you go. So that's Australian Unity's office fund modeled in a few minutes. And as I say, yeah, it's going to take longer to populate the assumptions than actually get the thing built. In terms of where we would go from this point in time, this is a great starting model, but say the fund is looking at other assets, it's as simple as selecting an investment property, clicking mirror module. That content will all get built out as a new investment property, as well as being hooked into my financials and so on. And that's really what Modano is about. We're really trying to move the needle away from people spending too much time wrestling with Excel formulas and logic and getting them into, okay, what are my assumptions? What's the actual analysis itself? Particularly around those repetitive scalable tasks, we just figure they should be automated, and as you've seen today, they now all are. Last thing just to cover off on quickly is that this model is designed to match monthly processes as well. So for example, rolling the model forwards each month is as simple as going to the time series assumptions, changing that last historical month, and the whole model will roll forward automatically. So I'll have a new area to enter my latest historicals. Conditional formatting will update to say, hey, wait a minute, I need information here, or this information is no longer relevant. And my financial statements will still have the two kind of stitched together. So these models also, from that perspective, are designed to last and become a real solid asset within the business as opposed to some sort of liability. So that's it. Australian Unity's office fund modelled in a few minutes. Thanks for listening.